History often teaches us that wars are won by numbers, speed, and inevitability. Empires rise because they are too large to stop, too ruthless to resist. But every so often, history fractures. A moment appears where logic collapses, where arithmetic becomes meaningless, and where the fate of thousands is decided by a handful of men who refuse to accept what the world calls inevitable. This is one of those moments. Not a legend sung by poets, not a myth carved into stone, but a winter battle buried beneath snow, blood, and silence, where fear changed sides and the greatest war machine on earth was forced to hesitate. 100 men against 10,000. On paper, it was absurd. By military logic, it was suicide. Yet in the winter of 1240, in a forgotten mountain pass on the shattered frontier of the Rus, the laws of war were not obeyed, nor were the laws of reason. That day, only iron and blood ruled, and the Golden Horde stopped moving forward. For the first time in generations, terror shifted direction. It was not peasants screaming as the Mongols approached. It was the conquerors themselves who learned fear. And it began with a single, impossible decision, made by one man who refused to kneel when the entire world already lay face down in the dirt. We are on the edge of the Rus lands. The Mongol Empire stains the map like spilled ink, spreading in every direction. Moscow has burned. Vladimir has been erased. Great Kiev, once a jewel of the East, is now nothing more than smoldering ash and scattered bones. Bada Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, has never known defeat. His army is not a chaotic horde of savages. It is a perfected system of destruction. Mongol riders can loose 6 arrows before the first strikes the ground. They move faster than news, faster than panic, faster than resistance can form. To them, opposition is not a challenge. It is an insult. And yet, on their path toward the heart of Europe, the Mongol vanguard made a single mistake. Arrogance. They ignored a narrow mountain passage in the frozen valley of Bigoda. No scouts were sent, no precautions taken. Why would they bother? Everyone who had resisted them, so far, was already dead, or so they believed. Blocking that pass, standing beneath the pale winter sun, was not an army, but a remnant. The last survivors of the Varangian Guard, northern mercenaries, axemen of Danish steel, exiles who had once served emperors in Constantinople and princes in Kiev. Now they had no masters, no pay, and most dangerous of all, nowhere left to run. At their front stood Bjorn, called the Unbreakable, nearly 2 meters tall, wrapped in chainmail and bear skins. He was not a commander of maps and polished strategies. He understood only one truth that never failed. Control the ground, and you control fate. Bjorn watched the horizon darken. 10,000 riders approached. The earth beneath his boots began to tremble. Any other commander would have ordered retreat. Bjorn ordered the line closed. Why stay? Why die for land already lost? The answer was not patriotism. It was mathematics. Bjorn knew what the Mongols did not yet realize. Bigoda was a funnel, a frozen corridor of rock and ice barely 50 meters wide. On open ground, Mongol cavalry would encircle and annihilate them within minutes. But here, numbers meant nothing. Here, 10,000 could only attack with 50 at a time. Bjorn had turned the battlefield into an equation where Mongol speed equaled 0. The Mongol vanguard crested the ridge and stopped. It must have looked like a joke. A handful of infantry blocking the road of the largest army on earth. Laughter rippled through their ranks. The vanguard commander, a young lieutenant hungry for quick glory, did not wait for infantry support. He gave the signal. The charge thundered forward. Thousands of hooves smashed against frozen ground, the sound engineered to break morale before steel ever touched flesh. Mongol warriors howled, bows rising, ready to drown the pass in death. But Bjorn's men did not move. No panic, no cries, only the metallic snap of 100 shields locking together. A wall of steel, the skullboard formation, a moving fortress. At 100 meters, the Mongols released their arrows. The sky darkened. The impact sounded like hail on a tin roof. And when the arrows passed, the wall still stood. Linden and oak shields, iron-rimmed and layered, absorbed the storm. The Mongols, accustomed to enemies breaking and fleeing after the first volley, met only silence. The distance closed. 50 meters. 20. 10. The horses slowed. War-trained beasts would not willingly crash into iron. Momentum shattered. Confusion rippled through the front ranks as riders tried to turn, break, escape. And then Bjorn shouted, "Not retreat, not fear. Attack!" The wall opened, not to flee, but to bite. 100 Danish axes fell in unison. This was not a battle. It was industrial slaughter compressed into 50 meters of frozen stone. The first Mongol line ceased to exist. Horses and riders were severed before sabers left scabbards. The psychological shock was catastrophic. Rear ranks pushed forward blindly, forcing comrades into a grinder of steel and bone. The valley clogged with bodies, steam rising from blood in the frozen air. Bjorn stood at the center, precision incarnate, his axe splitting laminated armor like cloth. For the first time, the Mongols could not maneuver, could not flank. They were trapped in a brutal tavern brawl against history's most lethal close combat fighters. Watching from behind, the Mongol lieutenant made his second mistake. Instead of withdrawing, he sent in the second wave. He believed exhaustion would finish the Varangians. He was wrong. For a Varangian, this was not fatigue. This was purpose. The second wave wasn't a charge. It was an avalanche. Riders forced forward by those behind them, crashing into dying horses, shattered shields, and rising axe blades. Bigoda became a hydraulic press of flesh. One slip on blood-slick ice, and the formation would collapse. If the wall broke, the massacre would be instant. So how do 100 men hold against an endless tide? Discipline, Roman precision fused with Viking fury. Bjorn commanded a machine. "Change!" roared a voice from the second rank. An emotion drilled 1,000 times in Constantinople. The front line stepped back as the second surged forward. A blink of an eye. To the Mongols, exhausted enemies vanished, replaced instantly by fresh men with steady breath and raised axes. Hope died with every rotation. Bodies piled up. Within an hour, a barricade of corpses a meter high formed before the shield wall. What had been an obstacle became a weapon. Mongol riders now had to slow, dismount, or force horses to climb their own dead. Their greatest strength, speed, was gone. Masters of motion were now slipping uphill through entrails, only to meet descending steel. From the rear, the Mongol lieutenant felt ice grip his spine, not from cold, but confusion. This was not in the teachings of Genghis Khan. Fear spread, not fear of death, but fear of the unknown. Desperation followed. He raised his sword and gave the unthinkable order. Fire. Mounted archers on the flanks loosed arrows into the mass. Indiscriminately. Kill everything in the choke point. The sky darkened again. It became fratricide. Mongol arrows tore through silk and leather. Varangians and Mongols fell together, but heavy shields and plate saved more Varangians than not. A scream rang out near Bjorn. Eric the One-Eyed, his second, took an arrow through the throat. He collapsed. The wall cracked. A Mongol leapt forward, triumph screaming, scimitar raised. This was the second where battles end. Bjorn dropped his shield. He didn't look at the Mongol. He looked at the gap. Both hands on his axe. Knuckles white. He charged. The axe carved a perfect arc the first attacker never saw it. His torso separated from his legs mid-stride. Bjorn pivoted, drove the rear spike through the second man's skull. Pure violence. Bjorn became the plug, holding alone, buying seconds. Close ranks, he roared, blood and teeth flying. Two young Varangians slammed shields together over Eric's body. The wall held. As dusk bled red across the snow, Mongol drums sounded retreat. Silence followed. Worse than noise. The riders withdrew. In the valley remained only groans and the breath of 100 men who had survived. Then Bjorn looked up, and his heart stalled. Not cavalry, infantry silhouettes. And behind them, machines. Catapults. Ballistas. Siege weapons brought to kill 100 men. That was not tactics. That was fear. And Bjorn knew the real trial was about to begin. At midnight, the The sound finally came. A dry, splintering groan echoed through the pass as timber bent beyond its limits. Then came the unmistakable strain of ox tendon cords pulled tight within torsion arms. Bjorn's head snapped up instantly. He had heard that sound before. Every veteran had. "Cover yourselves," he roared. They did not throw stones. They hurled fire. Clay jars packed with naphtha and black oil streaked across the night sky, carving brief orange scars through the darkness before shattering against the rock walls of the pass. They did not explode with thunder. They burst open, splashing a thick, burning liquid that clung to whatever it touched: shields, cloaks, hair, skin. The shield wall, perfect and disciplined, the same formation that had stopped cavalry charges, collapsed in seconds. No man can hold formation while burning alive. 3 Varangians were caught by the flames. Their screams tore through the night as they staggered blindly, transformed into living torches that illuminated the terror on the faces of their brothers. The stench of burned flesh mixed with frozen air, creating a sickness that turned stomachs and blurred vision. Bjorn understood immediately. The Mongols were not trying to kill them with fire. They were trying to scatter them. They wanted to force the defenders out of their fortified position, drive them into open ground where snow and panic would do the rest, and Mongol archers could finish the work from safe distance. "Nobody moves," Bjorn shouted, grabbing a man who tried to flee the flames and throwing him back to the ground. "Use the snow. Smother it with snow, but do not break the line." It was a cruel order. Staying still beneath falling fire felt like madness. But it was the only choice. If they ran, they died. For 2 endless hours, the bombardment continued. The mountain pass became a scarred wasteland, smoking craters, shattered stone, blackened ice. The Varangians crouched under angled shields, praying each burning jar would land just far enough away. 7 men were lost. 7 elite warriors reduced to ash without ever swinging an axe. Then, without warning, the fire stopped. Silence returned, but not peace. It was the silence before impact. Bjorn stood, shaking ash from his bearskin cloak. His eyes burned red as he studied the entrance to the pass. Fire had melted the ice there, turning solid ground into a slick, treacherous mire. A whisper ran through the line. "Listen." From the darkness came the sound of marching, heavy, metallic, rhythmic. Not horses, boots, 1,000 of them. Mongol heavy infantry emerged from the smoke. Turkic mercenaries and captured Chinese soldiers in layered iron armor, carrying long spears meant to tear open static defenses. They had come to finish what fire had begun. The Mongols had calculated carefully. Fire to shatter morale, smoke to blind, mud to steal footing. They expected survivors, broken, terrified, scattered. Instead, at 20 meters, they saw something that defied reason. A single figure stood atop a rock, striking axe against shield in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Clang, clang, clang. Bjorn was not hiding. He was inviting them. Behind him, 90 Varangians rose from snow and mud. They did not rebuild the shield wall. That formation was useless now. Instead, they spread into a wedge, the largest men at the tip. The boar's snout, a formation meant for offense. Bjorn had decided the defense was over. "If we die," he said calmly, "we die advancing. For Valhalla." He did not shout it. He stated it. Then they charged downhill, 100 men against 1,000 climbing upward. The collision should have favored the Mongols. Discipline, numbers, armor. But Bjorn had noticed something while the fire melted the ice. The ground beneath the Mongol infantry was no longer solid. It was mud layered over ice, slick with oil. The Varangians wore boots studded with iron spikes. The laws of physics changed in a heartbeat. The Mongol front ranks planted their feet to receive the charge and slipped. Men fell backward in a cascading collapse, arms flailing as they hit the ground just as northern steel came down upon them. While Mongols slid helplessly, Bjorn's men advanced with terrifying stability. Anchored to the earth, they transferred every ounce of strength into their blows. The sound of battle changed from ringing steel to dull, wet impacts as armor collapsed and bodies broke beneath axe heads. Bjorn fought at the tip, not with rage, but with brutal efficiency. A spearman lunged. Bjorn stepped aside, deflected the point, and dropped the axe onto the man's helmet. Another fell. Push inside, Bjorn roared. The wedge split the enemy formation, creating a corridor where numbers meant nothing. Shields smashed into knees. Men fell into mud and were finished on the ground. It was ugly, dishonorable, and unstoppable. A Mongol captain tried to flank them with elite troops. They surrounded a Varangian named Leaf, helmet lost, blood streaming from his arm. 3 Mongols rushed him. He took the blows and stayed standing. Something ancient took hold of him. He howled, grabbed one attacker, and smashed his head forward. Before the others could react, Bjorn's axe severed another man's legs. Panic spread. "They are not men," Mongols whispered. "They are demons." But demons tire. After 40 minutes of slaughter, arms grew heavy. Breath burned in frozen lungs. Bodies piled so high they blocked further advance. The wedge stalled. Bjorn felt it. The advantage was fading. Then a horn sounded. Not retreat. Something heavier. The Mongol infantry parted. One figure approached. A giant wrapped in black plate armor, carrying a massive iron mace. Behind him walked 12 elite warriors, the Kashig, the Khan's personal guard. This was execution. The giant stopped 10 meters from Bjorn and raised his mace. No words were needed. Bjorn spat blood and a broken tooth into the snow. "Rest," he told his men. "This is mine." The duel was not graceful. It was violent collision. The mace came down like a falling wall. Bjorn dove aside. The impact shattered rock and ice. The giant swung again, faster than his size suggested. Bjorn blocked too late. The blow hurled him backward. Pain exploded through his ribs. The world flashed white. The Mongols roared. The giant advanced slowly, savoring the moment. Bjorn lay gasping, strength draining away. And an instinct took over. He watched the man's feet. As the mace rose again, Bjorn slid forward between the giant's legs. The weapon slammed into the mud behind him. Bjorn hooked the back of the knee with his axe and pulled with everything he had left. The tendon snapped. The giant crashed backward. Bjorn was on him instantly. No pause. No honor. He dropped the axe, drew his seeks, and drove it into the only exposed place, the throat. The giant died, choking in the snow. Bjorn stood, shaking, broken alive. 10,000 Mongols stared at one man. And in that moment, fear took root. If their champion could fall, what chance did the rest have? The remaining 12 Kashig guards saw their leader fall, and whatever restraint still bound them shattered instantly. Rage replaced discipline. With a single scream of pure fury, they drew their sabers and charged as one. No formation, no caution, only vengeance. "Protect Bjorn," Leif shouted, spitting blood as he staggered forward. The surviving Varangians did not wait for orders. The sight of their leader, standing over the corpse of the black-armored giant, injected them with a final, impossible surge of strength. They fell upon the elite guards like starving wolves. The fight collapsed into raw chaos. There were no lines, no tactics, only men rolling in mud, smashing faces with stones, helmets, fists, even teeth. The Mongol elite, trained for controlled duels and disciplined killing, were overwhelmed by men who had already accepted death. Within minutes, the 12 guards were torn apart, dragged into the mire, silenced forever. Bjorn was pulled back by his men toward the choke point. He leaned against the rock wall and slid down until he sat, barely conscious. A young Varangian stared into the darkness. Are they retreating? Bjorn shook his head slowly. Pain clouded his vision. No, he whispered. Now they are offended. He was right. The Mongol high commander, watching from afar, no longer felt frustration. What filled him now was something colder. Calculation. Time had been lost. Men had been lost. Worse than that, the myth of invincibility had been damaged. If these men were allowed to live, the story would spread. The Horde could bleed. They could not be defeated. They had to be erased. War drums sounded again, faster, sharper, the rhythm of total assault. Stand, Bjorn said, using his axe as a crutch to rise once more. Look east. Behind the Mongol lines, the sky was changing. Pale gray light began devouring the night. "If we hold until the sun touches the valley floor," Bjorn said, whether lying or unknowingly prophesying, "we will be immortal." As dawn grew, it revealed the truth. The valley was an ocean of spears, banners, and helmets stretching beyond sight. The final tide was rising. Sunlight brought not hope, but clarity. The Mongol army did not charge screaming. They advanced in silence. 10,000 men moving as one body. 10,000 hearts beating with a single purpose: erase. Bjorn looked to his sides. Of the 100 men who had climbed the mountain, fewer than 40 could still lift a shield. Armor hung in torn straps. Faces were masks of soot and dry blood. They looked like ghosts, corpses refusing to lie down. "Circle," Bjorn ordered. His voice was barely more than a rasp, but every man heard it. There were not enough bodies left to block the pass. A straight line was impossible. The Varangians retreated inward, backs pressed together, forming a ring of steel, an iron hedgehog in a field of red snow. The Mongol mass crashed into them, not like cavalry, like a landslide. The fight stopped being about striking and became a battle against suffocation. There was no room to swing axes. The Varangians dropped long weapons and drew knives, stabbing through shield gaps, groins, throats, eyes. Anything soft. It was intimate, claustrophobic. Mongols died pinned upright, their bodies held in place by the pressure behind them, dead weight still pushing, still crushing. Bjorn felt his broken ribs grind under the force. He was pinned between a shield and a Mongol soldier who tried to bite his face in animal madness. Bjorn freed a hand, grabbed a stone, and smashed the man's skull until it stopped moving, but the corpse remained, a human sandbag holding him in place. "Hold! Do not break!" Leaf shouted. Physics did not care. The circle shrank centimeter by centimeter. Then the inevitable happened. A young Varangian slipped. He wasn't wounded. He stepped on frozen intestines and lost balance. He fell. The gap lasted less than a second. It was enough. 3 Mongol spears punched through. A Varangian beside the fallen took a blade where chainmail ended and flesh began. He screamed and dropped. The circle collapsed like water flooding a sinking ship. The Mongols poured inside. There was no front, no rear, only chaos. Bjorn fought alone in a storm of bodies. His axe was gone. He wielded a short Mongol sword torn from a dead hand. He turned, cut, shoved. His mind left his body. Instinct took over. He saw Leaf fall, on his knees, for spears buried in his chest, still trying to strangle a Mongol with his bare hands as he died. He saw Thorstein dragged under a sea of boots, vanishing. One by one, the lights went out. Yet the Mongols hesitated. These men did not beg. One Varangian with his arm severed continued biting and headbutting until his throat was cut. They did not die like soldiers. They died like rabid beasts. Bjorn felt a blow to the back of his head. The world tilted. He dropped to one knee. Cold snow touched his cheek. Sound faded, distant, muffled. "Stand," he told himself. "If you die kneeling, they win." He planted the sword and forced himself up. Blood filled his eyes, turning the world red. He swayed. The enemy ring opened, not for a duel. For archers. At 5 meters, they would not fight him. They would execute him. Bjorn smiled. A terrible smile, blood, broken teeth, absolute defiance. He dropped the sword and spread his arms. "Shoot," he growled. "And tell your Khan it took 10,000 arrows to kill one man." The bows drew. Time stopped. 12 arrows. The sound was not heroic. It was wet. Final. Thack. 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 The arrows struck Bjorn's chest together. The force snapped his body backward as if hit by an invisible hammer. Blood burst into the air, staining the snow. But Bjorn did not fall. That moment broke something inside the Watchers. By physics, he should have dropped. By biology, he should have been dead. But his spiked boots held. His knees locked. He remained standing, dead but upright. Silence fell. No one dared approach. Steam rose from his wounds, mixing with his last breath in the frozen air. He looked like a grotesque statue, 12 black feathered shafts protruding from his chest like the spines of a mythic beast. Why doesn't he fall? a young Mongol whispered. Gravity finally claimed him. Bjorn did not fall backward. He collapsed forward toward the enemy, as if trying to advance one last step by one more throat. With his fall, the spell broke. But Mongol morale was already poisoned. The last 5 Varangians smiled. They had seen the impossible. They charged, laughing, to die beside him. They were cut down in seconds, but they died killing. Then it ended. Wind replaced sound. The valley lay silent, a violated cemetery. The Mongol commander dismounted and walked among the dead. Most bodies were his own. The numbers were obscene. 10, 15, 20 Mongols for every Varangian. He stopped before Bjorn's body, face down among the elite he had killed. Do not touch them, the commander said finally. Burn our dead. Leave theirs. It was not honor. It was fear. Snow began to fall. The valley turned white. Perfect,